Good morning and welcome back to the Explicit Measures Podcast with Tommy, Seth, and Mike. Hello, everybody. Good morning.
Good morning. Happy 4th.
Happy 4th.
May the 4th be with you. No, that's May. Sorry.
That's the wrong month.
Yeah.
It does have a 4th in it, though.
You know, it was so bad. I didn't realize it was July 4th until yesterday evening. I was like, oh, it's a holiday. So
that's right.
Yeah. Welcome to working at home.
You self-employed folks, right? Don't have
there are no holidays.
Holidays. Yeah.
Well, it's also interesting and this is kind of one of the reasons why I'm bringing up the topic today. So today's main topic is should people return to the office? I actually found an interesting article. Someone shared this with me, and Gartner is putting out a quick article, and normally I would be like, okay, whatever. Someone's talking about their opinions about this.
Yeah.
This is Gartner. Gartner's talking about this. So Gartner is an organization that studies things for businesses and produces reports about interesting things. So anyways, I thought this was interesting. Article's going to be in the description below. We'll also put it in the chat window as well. That's our main topic. Let's jump into some news and other things. I don't know. Sorry.
It's a holiday.
In the US, this is a holiday. And so as we work with, so Tommy, to your point though, around, it's a holiday. Well, it is for the US, but if you have customers that live in other countries, it's not a holiday for them. They're still working. And the American way is, well, let's outwork everyone else. Let's keep working harder because that's what we do. We don't ever take breaks.
Which is why we're here right now.
Right now.
For no reason other than we love it, I guess.
I think we like each other.
Because we planned poorly. I think that was it.
Yeah, exactly. Because we planned poorly. No, Tommy, we know exactly what we're doing. We don't ever wing this by the seat of our pants. Anyways, let's jump into some news items here. What do we have going around? There's actually a couple kind of interesting announcements that I think have been coming out from the community. Let's hit off a couple here. Tommy, give us one of these that I think I found this one. Maybe you found it. I don't know. Semantic Link Labs. This is something from Michael Kowalski.
So this is actually hand in hand with a blog article that came out yesterday on the Fabric blog. Major updates to Semantic Link and Fabric. And part of that is the Semantic Link Labs. One of the big thing is it's actually pre-installed during runtime now. You don't actually have to import this manually a notebook. And if you're using Semantic Link, it's a big time saver.
Mm-hmm.
The biggest thing is, the Semantic Link Labs, which was Michael Kowalski, our good friend, who's done a ton with Tableau Editor 3 and scripts, is now, I think, full-time on how can he enhance the notebook experience in Fabric. I believe it's like a wheel or a package that includes over 120 functions that can extend the capabilities, pushing things to Direct Lake, actually pushing your semantic models to Direct Lake, pushing things to actually look at the Vertipack analyzer, and you can do that all in a Jupyter notebook, which is incredible.
This is the part that's amazing to me. A lot of the external tooling that we needed to use is doing a lot of these things that are just inside this Semantic Link now, and this Semantic Link Labs is now letting you modify things of the model. So you're able to not only just read things from the model, but you can change things. If you want to adjust your semantic model and push up a partition or repartition something differently, you can now command it to do so. I think this is really interesting. There's an update item, there's update Spark setting, update workspace user, update custom pool. So I'm really encouraged to see some of the features that are coming out here. It's no longer just listing data from the system. It's actually making changes to it now.
Yeah, I think the Vertipack analyzer one, selfishly, I'm really excited for, because back in the day, initially set up a project to go across your entire tenant with APIs and a PowerShell script and a bunch of other automation to basically look at a tenant and analyze each organization's best practices. And now you can just do this in Fabric with probably 3 blocks of code.
And the other option here too is, right, it returns a table of information for you, right? Correct?
Mm-hmm. So it becomes a data frame.
So the reason why I think this is important is because this now can be incorporated in part of your release cycle, right? So this to me is really interesting. So it's interesting to have, Vertipack Analyzer tell you the size of the columns, how many rows, what data, what's going on there. It's just a small table that describes the information
you're looking at.
Yeah, what you're looking at. So I like this idea of being able to incorporate this. And I'm sure John Kersey's going to jump on this one if he hasn't already. I probably haven't found the blog. He probably already talks about this one anyways. But John talks about a lot of these tests you do to the data sets. Well, this is a perfect example of run this notebook, connect to the data set, get out all your statistics, and then every time you move a data set from dev to test into production, you can see exactly what's occurring in that data set and compare this run or this build versus the last build. And you can see if things are missing. If there's any numbers that are drastically different, number of columns, your fact table gets smaller for some reason, maybe that's happening, maybe it's not, but like you can at least have some checkpoints on what's going on inside your data model. So I think this is really interesting. I'm actually doing maybe I'm going a little too early here. I'm doing some things with migrating other tools into Power BI. And one of them is, I think we're going from Click to Power BI. There's not a lot of usage metrics in Click that you can get your hands on. So we don't know what people are doing with the reporting. We have the reports, but we don't get to see their definitions, what they're storing, how they're using it, what are they creating, what kind of queries are being run against the servers. We just don't know those things. Now, that could be just the way the customers turn things on, but we lose a lot of visibility. And this gives me a whole bunch more. Power BI in general just gives us more visibility to what's happening behind the scenes, which is kind of cool. Anyways, I'm going
in all facets. And I think we're finally getting to the point, even and with tools like this, it just enhances it. The ability to really dive into the back end, right? To hone and performance tune, solutions and keep them maintained much longer. It's not just how are people using things, or I'm running out of space, or I'm having some complications and I don't know how to solve them.
Yep.
And that's for better or worse. I think one of the things Microsoft products have always allowed you to do, get at the guts of the systems and what they're doing, as opposed to obfuscate them or put them behind a layer where you wouldn't really know.
Well, and I think really now with notebooks too, it's not just the back end. It's because, Mike, to your point, it becomes a data frame. All these solutions were, in a sense, somewhat available through someone's custom Power BI report you had to download or some function. But the problem was it ended with you. There was no way then to actually push that data out without much more advanced tooling.
Yes.
Now, very easily, because you're using a Jupyter notebook, if I can pull this data, but then I can, again, push it where I need to make it more visible.
Mm-hmm.
That we've never had with all these tools before, because they usually just lived on your own computer if you wanted to actually see that information. So this is really creating that bridge for a lot of things we've talked about in data ops.
I'm picking at the documentation here. So the link that I put out here is the semantic link documentation for Senpai Labs. There's a couple other items here. I'm looking under the sub packages. There's like the direct lake package, the lakehouse package, and I'm looking at one of these functions here. There's one called optimize lakehouse tables. This is really interesting because the UI today in Power BI does not give you the ability to optimize an entire lakehouse and all of its tables. This is a function that can run that will optimize the entire table. Or basically you can pick a table in a lakehouse, or you can just not specify the lakehouse name and optimize everything in the lakehouse, which I think is incredibly helpful and something that should be done regularly anyways on your lakehouse stuff. So I've talked to a couple of customers, help them do some things with optimizing things in Databricks because they weren't using deployment Delta Live tables, which automatically optimize. But this is something that people don't understand. They're not used to maintaining tables like you would do in SQL. It just kind of handles itself. You don't have to clean stuff up. I mean, maybe you do, but you're not having to run like cleanup commands on the SQL tables themselves. This is something that's kind of different for the lakehouse, and customers are going to overcharge themselves on storage costs because they're not properly taking care of their tables. And again, it's this kind of stuff. It's like these it used to be only a read-only. I'm just very impressed by what's coming out here because it feels like a lot of the stuff that's missing in the UI in PowerBI.com is now getting solved by these other tools. And this is one of those tools that's extremely helpful. Anyways, we'll move on. Another news article here. We're going to skip the June 2024 update, Tommy. Let's go right over to Fabric Studio. Tommy, what did you find there?
So this is from our fellow MVP, and Seth, you're gonna have to help me with pronunciation. I'm not even gonna try to butcher it, but it's Gerald
Gerhardt.
I guess that wasn't that hard at all. Okay, no, still terrible. So the way you make it sound, so he already has a Power BI visual VS Code extension.
Correct.
That has a ton of capabilities to query your data with notebooks using the API to actually pull and look at all of your data models, look at your gateway, your configuration. Mm-hmm. Well, he now has come out with another VS Code extension called Fabric Studio, which now actually incorporates the Fabric API for a lot of IntelliSense. So if I want to quickly utilize the API, but I'm not sure of all the documentation, all I have to do is simply just right click on the semantic model or the artifact that I want to see. And the VS Code extension basically already sets it up with parameters and says, oh, here are the allowed things that you can get from this particular artifact. There's a lot more capabilities coming down the road, but this is pretty darn cool that what's available here. And honestly, it becomes almost a better way to manage things than you would do in a user interface in some ways. So this is something I think he just released. So I'm sure there's more to come.
I'm going to go again down this route. The last two items we talked about here on the news these are very technical items. This is very code-based stuff. For us who don't mind using Visual Studio and rolling around these things, this is not bad at all. This is actually very helpful, believe it or not. But I'm not sure I'm going to recommend this for like the average user. Like if you're a power user, for sure, this makes total sense. If you're not, I'm not sure, Tommy.
I mean, there's nothing you install. It's just a VS Code. If you're already opening VS Code extension,
that's what I'm saying. Like if you're already in VS Code,
you have to. That's
you already are doing code.
It's a no-brainer kind of thing.
Yes.
I mean, just say.
I just want our audience to understand. Like this is like a very detailed way of going into it, and like your comment on it's probably a better way to navigate than the portal. I mean, I'd agree. It's just a folder structure. It's a lot simpler to that degree, but like you're already like we're in the land of code.
With VS Code, sure.
Like,
okay,
I'm kind of prefacing this like, I'm probably not going to throw away PowerBI.com and just go, you know what? Everyone in the company, we're all going to install VS Code. We're only going to do things reporting with VS Code from now on. Gerhard, you should build another extension that just basically runs everything. Can you render the report in VS Code? If we can render the reports in VS Code, that's it. We're throwing out the portal.
VS Code for everybody.
VS Code for everyone. We're just deleting all of PowerBI.com. We're just going to render everything through VS Code.
Phenomenal.
Tommy would.
Tommy would.
We're going that way with most things.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh,
yeah, that and everything on the internet, on the web, right?
Yeah, right.
Sorry, I was doing a little quick jab there.
We could keep going with that.
Yeah, we could. Any other news things we want to talk about, or jump over to Beat on the Street? All right, sounds like we're going to Beat on the Street. Tommy, you got a so this is more of just real world here, right? So Tommy's, it's a holiday for us. We're kind of letting what little hair we have down. Tommy what's going on in the Tommy household?
So it's the summer. Our house, we're continually always doing improvements, and one of the big things that's been on our bucket list since we moved in was our deck. It was already falling apart. It was, even the concrete was falling apart on it, and we're finally now getting one of our local guys to come in and basically build the deck out, so it's actually be something you can be on. It's all come apart yesterday. Started yesterday, and my wife was walking me around and showing me all the different components. She is the one who planned both the design, the measurements, the tooling, the actual what wood we're going to have, where things were going to go. We're going to also move this door because her past life, she was actually an interior designer, and she actually helped.
Now she's an exterior designer.
Yeah,
she's expanding the role now.
Yeah, but basically helping people with these. So she knows all this in and out. And I was looking at all this, and I was just freaking out. One about the old wood on the side. I'm like, how many nails are there? And two, I don't know squat about any of this. To your point, VS Code.
VS Code.
And I don't. It was just one of those moments of, oh yeah, you're an expert here, and you're telling me things about joints and where things are coming together that I have no context on. And I had just a moment of like, it's good to have experts in things, because if she wasn't, if she was just not your normal person who didn't basically spend her entire life help building houses and putting those together, I don't know what this would look like. She's telling the construction guy,
Tommy, if you did it, if this was designed by Tommy,
my God, people would die.
Everything would be a square. People would die. It would be everything would literally be a square. It would just be, okay, we're just gonna make a bigger square, and it might even look like from the sky. Like if you took a drone up and looked at it, it would probably look more like a bar chart. It'd have like cascading bars that are rectangles that are increasing in size.
It looked like the Power BI icon.
Maybe.
That'd be an amazing deck.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It would be good luck to actually have me out of the right proportions. We're actually even moving the door and taking down the wall, and she's like, yeah,
you're doing some serious remodeling then.
Seriously stuff. But the way she put it, yeah, anyways, but she knows this. And for us, we were talking about VS Code and APIs and all that, and can't be an expert in everything, but man, you realize us being MVPs and all the time that we spent doing this, I mean, no matter what, there's always another, like there's more rocks to uncover, and it's always good to learn.
It's interesting you say this, Tommy, because this is always, I mean, this is kind of this is a trade-off that we're making at this level, right? So we do the data, we work hard on these things, we try to be balanced with our family and whatnot. But to your point, though, like these are not things we could not. I feel all of us could be very capable to do these things. Do we choose the time to learn them and grow and do house remodels, or do we choose the time to, or instead learn more things about Power BI? I honestly, I would prefer to learn more things about data and Power BI. I like that part. I don't think everyone has that mindset, it's just also, we've chosen a direction that's, we're going to specialize in something and not specialize in something else, which I think is actually kind of interesting, just in general from where do you spend your time? What's important to you?
It's interesting. I take this as kind of a broader analogy. Maybe it is an analogy, right? Where Tommy's outlining that his wife's expertise in particular areas, right, is valued in the things that they do, right? And if you extrapolate that across, like, are you more of a general contractor where you're just you're building things, right? Or are you the architect? Are you designing what it's going to look like? You understand all the components. You are the one that's telling the contractor, here's what I want you to do. Here's why. Here's what this is going to look like, because you already envision the final product. And I think that's the value of experts or people that can build the right things for you to last a long time, right? Like, and not everybody is that person. However, it takes a lot of time and effort to become those people, right? And in career progression, right? Like, are you the one that is just putting things together as someone has designed for you? Or are you pushing yourself to the point where you're designing, you're building, you can do everything from start to finish and like build something that lasts? And I think there's a lot of correlation between, his example and or any work environment, actually.
This just got really deep, I think, there. As you were saying this, I'm thinking, man, I really want to be the person doing the designing as opposed to the person just working out the design from somebody else. If I'm choosing the place to be, that's where I'm trying to pick. I don't want to be the person making the deck. I want to be the person designing the deck.
Well, and I think like, so there's a career parallel there, but I also think that's where a lot of people get bit, because just because you can hammer a nail into, a piece of wood,
Yep.
doesn't mean that you hit the joist, right? And like, did you do what you needed to do because you figured out a way to do it, or did you do it the right way? Like, meaning the most optimal, the most performant, and like pick 500 things like in your past. Like, I can look back and be like, oh man,
that wasn't efficient.
When I first started, right, I would do this and this and this, and now I'm like 5 iterations past that because I've learned and I've grown. Are you doing that? Are you, and that's a question to everybody. It's like, are people just figuring it out, or are you figuring it out? Like, do you know how to hit the nail, but you also know what to look for underneath? Like, is there intent behind what you're solving for the business? Meaning, you've done, like, you implemented something, but it just gnaws on you. You're like, I don't know if I did that the right way. So I'm gonna go, like, I'm gonna do more like background research. I'm gonna look at this. I'm gonna, like, figure it out for myself so that I can performance tune or iterate on it, or next time do it better. You know what I'm saying?
YouTube must know I'm very dumb, because every time I'm on the YouTube Shorts, there's like always like 1,000 contractors that show up, showing them like taking an extra board, screwing a nail halfway through it, putting a board into something, and then using it as like a lever to push the boards in the right place. I have seen probably hundreds of hours of people doing rafters and roofing. I'm like, how does YouTube know I need to know this stuff? Like all these shortcuts. But to your point, Seth, like it's all these, like, if you do it a lot, you find a faster way to do it, or in a more efficient way of doing it. And sometimes if you're not doing that all the time, you don't really know the best way to pick things.
Honestly, I'm beginning to realize that I think calling yourself an expert or feeling that you are an expert in something is all about what I would call context. Where, to your point, Seth, you may know how to do something, but could have been done better. Do you know what else could be uncovered, or like what other technical debt or what other debt you're incurring if you do it a different way? It's just going into a situation, even in our world, talking to someone or seeing a single report going, okay, I can already assume some of their adoption. I can assume where they're at based on how many filters are on the page, because I've seen this before. So yeah, it's not just the knowledge. It's really all the uncovery with context.
Excellent. Well, I think with that, I think we've got some good intro pieces. And with this, and Tommy getting all the work done on his home, I think it's time to we talk about, should Tommy actually go into the office now? Is this the right time for Tommy, or is the office getting improved so that he can stay at home longer now? So this is great. Good topic now. This topic comes from Gartner. Gartner is, I guess, I'm not sure exactly how to explain them, Seth. I think they're just like a third-party research company, and they just research general business, insightful, I guess, action items, research around businesses, and then just kind of produce white papers around trends. You pay for their services, and they kind of give you, here's an extract of our findings with doing research with these large companies. Is that an accurate way, Seth, of kind of portraying who Gartner is?
I don't know why you're leaning on me. It sounds fantastic, Mike. I think you're right. They go around. They're a body, right, that is respected.
Yeah.
Right. And they do a lot of research into these different things that help guide companies, as well as, kind of give the lay of the land on across the whole suite of products and things like that as well.
Okay. Again, I don't know why I lean on you, Seth. You just feel like someone who would, you feel like someone who would read a lot of Gartner. I don't know.
I think ultimately it's just a research based firm.
Right. That's what I thought. Yeah. It's just like a research firm. But I would say they're very well known, because almost every single BI tool, this is how I know about them, right? The only reason I know about them is because Microsoft continually puts their articles up and say, look how good we are. We're the best. We're the leaders in ability to execute. We're the leaders in innovation and analytics. So they've been doing this for quite a long time. I think I just saw an article from Kim Manish pop out that said Microsoft, I think this was 17 years, a leader in BI. And then I think 6 years ability to execute they've been the leader in the ability to execute on their vision of the BI and the BI platform.
The quadrant,
yeah, the magic quadrant piece, which I think is a great graphic showing all the competitors in the analytical space. Excellent. But in this article, the article is really around return to office mandates aren't really worth the talent risks. And this is very interesting to me. And I think this one also corresponds to someone who was also playing out the idea of this idea of going back to work. And don't quote me on this, but if you have companies that are pushing more to mandate come back to work, think about that. I think about it now as an employee or as an owner of a business. Basically, I have my space in my basement. I know where I go to work. It's literally 2 seconds away from where I'm at. I can go upstairs. I can see my kids in the summer. If my wife needs to dip out and go do something and go, build a deck on the back of my house, I can still see the kids and help out a little bit. There's a whole bunch of really, I think, advantages for me with work-life balance that happen by being at home. And so I really enjoy this. I'm in no way am I trying to get back into a corporate setting and go into an office all the time. I actually very much write my statements of work to make sure that it's very expensive for the clients I work with to make sure that I don't have to go into work. So I try and keep myself at home. But that being said, there's a large impact of time, effort, wear and tear on your car, gas. I mean, imagine you're driving 30 minutes into work, into your office. Well, that's an hour every day. That's, 52 weeks of getting into an office. That's gas money that you're not getting basically compensated for. If you're in a place where you have to park downtown, they're not providing you free parking. You got to go pay for parking and stuff like that. Someone said it could be anywhere between like $20,000 to $30,000 more just to go into the office based on the time that you're driving, not working. That's an expense to you, treating your time, and then all the car things that go along with it as well, and the parking. I'm like, that's interesting. So I'm kind of curious your thoughts on this. Tommy and I have the luxury of being able to make our offices our basement. So I think we're going to lean on that a little bit there. But Seth, you work for a company that has offices. What's your policy? Is the policy changing in your world? Are you seeing other businesses do the same thing? I don't know. It's kind of curious what's happening here.
Yeah. So I'm hearing things, right? I think what strikes me is the preface for this article, right? So over the last 12 months, what they're saying are 63% of HR leaders report an increase in expectations for employees to return to office, right?
Yes.
So
corporate mandates coming.
Right. So of those, though, 74% of HR leaders cite these mandates as a source of conflict. So
huge.
And for reasons that they're talking about. But like specifically, I, like you, really enjoy working from home for some of the things that you outlined. Like all of a sudden, during the periods where everybody was working from home, we figured out how to work from home effectively. And when you do that, I personally also built my team during that time.
Yeah, you built a remote team.
One of the benefits of, like
you can pull talent from anywhere.
Opening the doors is I can pull talent from anywhere. So I'm picking the best people for the position.
Yep. Regardless of where they
live.
Yeah.
Right. As opposed to being relegated to only a small subset of people that come into an office.
Yes.
And I think that is a fantastic thing for businesses that they encountered. Now, is it unique that my entire team was built during that time? Yes, it is. So, like, there are two things that I look at. One is it makes no sense for me to go back into the office. Like a large part of our organization is spread out, but it also there's also this, the more global the business, the more all of our time is talking with other people in different areas. So we're not in the same places.
Yes.
So I think in the technology area specifically, it may look different, related to should you be applying these, go to work kind of mentalities for folks that are buried in technology and, communicating across all these things? I think that's where a lot of the friction comes in. And also there's the real world aspects that you lay out, Mike, which is, it for individuals who appreciate, who value their time at work or out, right? Like a 2-minute walk up the stairs or down the stairs is much better than a 30-minute drive into the office.
Yep.
Because I save an hour a day, right? It's not just the drive, it's the time that the business gets. Because when I wake up, I can just walk upstairs. I can walk to my thing, and I'm plugged in right away. So all of the sudden, I think there's been this challenge where folks are like, well, okay, if I have to do that, I'm burning an hour a day minimum. Maybe it's 2 hours a day.
Yep.
And either that eats into my time, but conversely, it adds or can add to the business's time.
Correct.
Because it's just, this is the routine and part of the day. And there's a lot of conveniences, I think, that people have started to really appreciate with work from home. But there's trade-off. I think some teams don't work well from home and may benefit from, return to office. But it's the challenge of, are you telling some people to come in and work, in the office, and you're allowing others to work from home, and you're creating friction in that direction, because I know that exists as well. So I don't know. Those are just some real-time thoughts, but
so
on my company, but I have more to say about other people I know.
So let's consider why so many organizations are also pushing for this too. This is not so.
Tommy's taking the side of the corporate. All right, Tommy, let's hear it.
I'm saying there's an argument either way. I'm not even saying I agree with it, but there's also this part of this even article happening is there are so many organizations that are not just, hey, could you come back to work, but they want to actually make it a mandate.
Yes, correct.
And it's not just
like
one
do
or
it,
two.
or we're firing, or like you're going to be let go in a certain amount of time. Like, I get it, and I think to your point, Tommy, I think about I know where you're going with this one. I'm going to keep hearing your comment. So keep going. I think I have some comments on this one too.
I don't know where I'm going, but we'll see where we go back. But no, so there's obviously a need that organizations and leadership sees having people come in, or else they wouldn't be willing to risk people leaving.
I don't think they know that though. I honestly, I think leadership is making decisions based on, okay, the pandemic's over. We're coming back into, we have bought. So I think there's also this idea of like corporate has bought this building, has made this facility, has like, there's been investments made to build infrastructure to support teams of people showing up at work to do stuff. And I think at some point they're like, okay, we've had enough. It's good. And the interesting thing I think is for me is I don't know if productivity or people's efficiency goes down when they're not at work. Now, I totally agree that there are certain industries. And again, I'm very much talking in the IT tech space of the world. And I'm working in companies that are not building more infrastructure on-prem. They're moving things to the cloud. So I think in our industry, we have a bit of a luxury around the things that we work on. You can't even go touch them, honestly. The things that we work on are in a browser. That's what we have to go work on anymore. Realistically.
Right. And I mean, from the technical side, it's almost a no-brainer. I happened to be lucky enough to be at an organization going in every day when the pandemic hit. And so it was an immediate, jump from, I always thought I was the type of person that working from home, I would get fired immediately because I just didn't think I could handle it, to there's no choice now.
We're still trying to figure that one out, Tommy.
We're still figuring that out. but really every day I connected to my PC's VM. So it wasn't even my own computer, but there's still this other side of, and I'm going to go off of one of the words Seth said, is this convenience factor that can get a little on and off, because I'll give you a little example of something's happening right now that's not even necessarily an organization, but we're actually trying to start up the Fabric and Chicago Power BI user group again. And I just had a nice call with someone who's going to help manage it. We're going to do it in person. We haven't done it in person for many years now, when it was a monthly thing, because that's what you did. But it's so much easier just to set up a YouTube video, sit down, do your session, and be done with it. Because I don't have to go downtown. I don't have to worry about food. This is easy, and I can say I did it.
Yep.
However, we obviously know there's something missed with that. There's something being left behind with it. So part of me can see from a leadership point of view why they'd want people to, like actually see their faces, because we're not just IT, and I want to make that distinction. Even though we're in the IT space, we don't work in a corner office with all the lights off, helping set up servers. Like if we're doing our job right, and I think regardless of where you are on the business intelligence space, there has to be some personable skills, and we just had a conversation about that. And I mean, one of the questions could be asked: could adoption be affected without ever seeing the people who are actually going to be touching the reports?
Yes.
Yeah.
I do agree
think,
with that.
yeah. And listen, like nothing beats in person, right? Like in terms of like certain engagements, right? Like if you're doing a large training, if you can look in people's faces and be like, okay, hold on, like we're gonna pause here and we're gonna dive into what the stuck point is here, or whatever the case may be. And I don't there is that, but I think personally speaking, I've also adapted to working really well online, right?
That's the point.
I think key things that are important is pushing a culture where people have their videos on.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%.
It is you have to pick up on facial cues. You have, like, we're still having a conversation, albeit digitally, and the difference between that and looking at initials
so different.
Is night and day, right?
I'll totally agree with that.
If you're not in an environment where like 90+% of the people, or it's just a mandate that people are using video, I can see that it would be very disjointed. And I don't think that's a good, positive remote culture working experience where it's accepted that you have the vast majority of people in a meeting not showing their video, right? Because it's supposed to be a dialogue.
Yep.
Yeah.
Like we have to solve a problem together. We're still relating. It's just we're looking at screens instead of you being in person, but I can still pick up everything that I need to. And like for business intelligence, it's weird, right? Because a lot of what we're doing is technology, but I could make an argument that, like, does it make more sense that when we engage with a business user, that sometimes it is more effective? However, right, like being able to pull up my screen and have everything prompted, and here's exactly what I want to talk about, as opposed to messing around with the stupidity of conference rooms and
projectors,
just
can't see
hardware
stuff.
Right? The hardware stuff, and it's too small and I can't do that. Like, dude, I'm so glad I don't have that anymore, right? Then it's not just the stress of putting together a presentation or trying to, have a session with a business user. It's something's not working, and like, great, we're in the same room together, but now we have technical difficulties, and like it's breaking the flow of what is, just a very good back and forth of communication to get a work output done. But having said that, I know that, like, this, we're talking specifically about like business intelligence, right? Like our technology people, because I could make an opposite argument where I would say it's been shown, like I would like, there are certain teams even in our organization that are not like work within operations and business, that team of people consistently goes into the office at least 4 days a week, because all the issues coming in there's so much tribal knowledge going on in this small group of people sharing how to solve something. Like the conversation about solving problems within, their area of expertise is all chatter all the time. And when you're ramping up people into those areas that are support and build and, data modification and stuff like that, those teams, like, they benefit from being around each other in those areas. And I think there's been some benefit in commercial areas as well with sales folks, because there's a competitive spirit, or, the interaction is more appreciated, I think. But it's an interesting, I think, quagmire that businesses have to, navigate here. And what I what I don't see in this Gartner like analysis, and maybe it's part of the deeper research, is what areas of business are creating the most struggles, right? Like there's probably some areas that love the fact that mandates are going back in, and they love people, and they want to be in the office all the time to have that interaction, versus where I land is probably the opposite spectrum, which is I appreciate not being bugged for 45 to 50 minutes a day, like where people are just coming by to say hi, because that's detracting from the mountain of stuff I have to do that is more business, that provides business value, right? Like, and I think that's like the difference here is like, do businesses think that the social interaction that is not happening because we're all like, a lot of us are still remote, all of a sudden like creates better culture or better engagement in the office? But in reality, like it's just wasted time. Like people waste,
so
I have lots
from
of
an antisocial guy.
Yeah.
I'm not antisocial, but it's just like
you're an introvert.
I'm the bullet guy.
People don't energize you. So when Seth's tired, he just turns off his camera and just takes a little nap while in meetings. Like, I'm done with this call. I'm just going to turn off my camera now. We're done.
I found that very effective. Yes.
Yeah, right.
So, Tommy, you're going to say some things. I have a couple points. So before we move on topic wise, I think you said a lot of really relevant things. I want to sit on this point for a bit here, Tommy. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Okay. I wrote down a couple things here.
Listening.
I think there's a couple, Seth, I really like your observations. I think they're very relevant. And in the article, I want to point out a couple things, right? There's this really drastic chart they put on top of here, right? They said an average employee is, factors that contribute to why users would stay or not stay. And their intent to stay when these mandates are occurring, an average employee is down 8%. So you might lose 8% of your workforce if you enforce these mandates. A high performance employee, that's the one I was kind of going at, the more item here was, and I think the observation here is very relevant. A high performer may feel especially resentful about these mandates because they were able to maintain their performance over long delivered times during the pandemic, where they kept their level of performance. So they perceive the return to office mandate as a signal of mistrust from management. Hey, I did the job when I was at the office. I maintained my level of job effort. I changed, I adapted, I got cameras, I moved my stuff. Like, they're still high performers. This is your risk. I mean, honestly, to me, this is what companies should be very quick to protect, because you lose those high performing individuals. What's the phrase, Seth or Tommy? Like, is like 20% of the people do 80% of the work sometimes. Like there's a couple.
It's terrifying.
It's terrifying. And so to me, I'm like looking at this going like, hey, someone needs to pay attention to this, because what will happen is you're going to see companies that are doing well, they're high performant, they influence this mandate, and what happens is their talent leaves and goes to other companies that will leverage their skills. And so I would love to hire the top performers. Give me a top performer from anywhere. Let me use them, right? And so I think there's this in my mind, there's this mindset of, that person is really helping our company out. We don't need, it's strategic for us to make sure that they're, engaged with the company. So that was one of my thoughts. I thought that was a really relevant point in the article, and it really resonated with me. I've seen brain drain. I've seen leadership in the company change, and all the really smart people start leaving the company, and the company really just kind of like washes out. It's like, you're not really as innovative, as impactful as you used to be, because a lot of your talent has left. With this also, I want to say the tools I think we use today now after the pandemic are different than before. I think digital whiteboarding, very relevant. I use Miro all the time now. Great tool. I think honestly, I would rather go into a meeting with that Miro project or tool in front of me, diagramming things out, talking to clients, explaining things. We can graphically show things much better. To your point, Seth, I don't have to run to a wall in an office to go start drawing on a scribbled out whiteboard. I can use real icons. I can use real things that represent. I think it helps really the story of like what you're architecting with the client. So I think it's great. Screen sharing, I think you pointed out, I think it's wonderful. It actually helps out a lot as well. And then the last one here I put out is there's all of our tools are becoming more collaborative. So I'm thinking about notebooks where 2 users can come into the same notebook. So data engineering, 2 users can be in the same notebook doing the same code at the same time. Dude, this is amazing. Like, that's unheard of. You can't do that in an office, in a meeting room. You can't write code together like that. So I think the tools themselves have designed themselves a bit more for just in general collaboration. And to that point, I expect this, right? Why doesn't Power BI Online give you the ability for multiple people to be in the same report making changes on things? I have the same experience in Miro. I can make an object, I can stylize the object, I can click on it and add elements and change the text. Meanwhile, Tommy can be in the same document editing something somewhere else. This is the power of, like, this should be here already. So to me, I'm like, this is amazing. And I think the expectation with more and more of our tools will be multiple people collaborating, editing on the same things together. I think that's huge. Another one I'll just point out that I love is live share in VS Code. I'm a good developer. Well, let me say this. I'm a decent developer. I'm not an expert, but I have people on my team that are great developers, and I love learning from them. So having tools and things like that as well, where I can watch them write code, I can navigate a code library with them at the same time, and we can work together. We don't even share screens. We just work solely in a live share inside VS Code to get stuff done.
Yeah.
So I feel like I need to push back a little, and I do want to take this from a little more macro, because all of your examples, while one I do agree with, they're also taken from the perspective of someone who uses a lot of cloud-based systems. And
totally agree. Yes, this is what I'm saying. This is specific to our industry. I think our industry has unique that way.
It's very specific to, especially you and I, where, oh, look, I am a company of X, like 4 or 5 number of employees. Where the problem, I think, lies is everything you said. I don't think anyone can argue with. However, let's take this from a wider approach here. And if you've ever done or tried to do a dashboard day with 50 people online, good luck to get everyone on board. There becomes a point of scalability and the volume of people where I really do believe, and we already saw this in one of the surveys we reviewed, I believe, earlier this year. People are seeing more data, but they are sensing a decrease in a data culture of their organizations. And this was from the guy who did the storytelling with data. And that was another survey that also came out. There is something that we have to consider here where, to your point, I can still shut off my video if I want. If someone's doing a screen share and I'm sitting at my desk, I can follow if I want, but I don't have to compared to being in an office.
Okay, that's what I would agree.
Yes, yeah.
I would agree with that one.
That's
why cameras on, I think, works really well in this situation, because if you turn your camera off, what are you doing? And we don't know. And so the conversation immediately, I'll say this, from my observation on that point exactly, Tommy, the conversation immediately degrades when the cameras are off, because people start doing other things and they get distracted. And that's why I think the camera on mandate as a leader or a manager is really, really important, because it helps people kind of focus. And you can kind of see, oh, look, Tommy's always looking at the bottom left-hand corner. He must be watching
writing notes.
Writing notes. Writing notes. Not watching ESPN.
No, really, guys, I'm paying attention.
I'm so paying attention right now. This is great.
Yeah, keep talking, Tommy. Yep.
I got
focused on.
I'm with you.
Phenomenal. I'm going to do audio only podcast moving forward, but we're also still talking about micro interactions when it's me and 5 people in this time period. When we actually start looking at enterprise organizations or just medium-sized organizations, managing all of those people where they're also not developers who are more inclined to use, cloud-based solutions. How do we actually manage data culture and adoption? I think we're really going to see some struggle here where, one, we have the usage numbers, but the way people can actually, one, get to a question, and two, getting the buy-in, I think is going to be much harder. So this is actually going to kind of lead into the hot take of the day. And I think I really do agree with this. So again, that 1 to 7 scale, but in the coming years, if the the continuing increase of work from home continues, it is going to be harder than ever to grow and support Power BI adoption and increase data culture. It's going to be harder than it ever was before.
So 1 is totally disagree and 7 is totally agree.
Mm-hmm.
1.
Oh my goodness. Really?
Seth's great on these hot takes. I love these.
And I disagree with that. So, okay, continue.
So Tommy, you're saying, let me make sure I understand the question, because I'm not sure. You said with the, if the work from home increases, it will be harder to maintain data culture and particularly reporting. Is that what you're kind of going after?
100%.
I said it in like 3 words. It's great. All right. I think I understand what you're going after. I think I'm going to also go with Seth. I think I'm going to say a 1 on this one. I don't think it'll be more difficult. So I would also argue Power BI is trying to be more of this online collaborative tool. Get it anywhere you want. Build it and put it on your phone. Build it and put it on your iPad. Be mobile. Like, I don't think that's required. I don't think it's going to be harder for us to continue to engage that way. So I think I would say no, 0 or 1.
Seth, what are your reasons for this?
I think
2 ones in a row, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're conflating certain presentation or generalized training classes with data culture. Like increasing data maturity or building a data culture in an organization has everything to do with the tools and capabilities of individuals understanding how to work with data and the value that it brings to them and the business. And none of that has anything to do with doing that in person or with doing it like remotely. It's so unbelievably different in my mind that you get a 1. Like otherwise none of what I've been able to do in the last 5 years would have been of value. Like Mike built a business during this time on business intelligence, data culture building,
and most of them don't live in Wisconsin. Like, so I only have one company in Wisconsin that I do work with. Everything else is remote. So like, I felt like for me, being able to be on camera, have a studio, be able to do things quickly. I can be on a meeting in Australia in the morning. I can hit a meeting in Europe midday, and then I can jump into a meeting in California in the evening.
You're even more effective.
I'm even more
it's the opposite. It's so far the opposite. It's almost a negative rating on Tommy's hot take.
-7. A -7. But I honestly, I think I was in a very unique position, and I honestly got very scared when the pandemic hit, because I thought, oh shoot, I don't know what's going to happen. And I thought as soon as that occurred, I'm done. Like, my business is going to go under. I'm hoping someone will hire me back to a full-time employee, because I think I'm in trouble because of this. And so I think at the end of this article, and I'm going to, maybe to your question, Tommy, the hot take, and maybe part of my final thought here, I'm going to kick in here is, at the very end of this, there's like 3 things to tell your peers. And I think this is talking to like leaderships of companies that you should kind of observe from this article, right? It sounds to me that they're trying to say, look, going back to the office isn't a bad thing. They're not trying to say that at all. It's the hard mandate and your policies not allowing for the flexibility of users to kind of engage with that how they will. Will we ever go back to everyone coming back into the office full time? Probably not, honestly. I don't think we'll ever really fully go back to everyone in the office 5 days a week. However, I think you're going to need to let culture kind of take its route, and it will need to, I think slowly we'll get more engagement back to the office. I think slowly we'll get, maybe 3 days a week. Maybe, there's always going to be this 1 or 2, because honestly, the world and how families work, I think, is changing, right? There's a lot more dual, both parents work or both, partners work in a company or work in companies. It's just more flexible with kids. Someone gets sick, it's easier to work from home and take care of people at home and have that a bit more balance between those things as well. So, I mean, I think we're in a very unique area. I think our industry allows us to push way more towards remote work, and it can be still successful, and we can still deliver a lot of value. Will all companies do this? I don't think so. I think over time, companies will start downsizing their offices. They will get smaller. There'll be less space for them to require as companies, and they're gonna work more efficiently that way, I think. Sorry. What's your final thoughts, Tommy?
No, I think there is a balance. So it's funny. You were wondering about your business, and I started one during the pandemic.
You
So
start, yep, exactly right.
yeah, but however,
Tommy got kicked out of work and just said, go home anyways. And he's just like, I just might as well start my own business.
But it's funny, ironically enough, I still get asked, like people find me because I'm in Chicago, even.
Yep. Chicago's a big area.
Right. And that was part of the reason why I think so far so good, but there's still something to location that I'll say under the human condition that we won't get into.
Mhm.
I agree. Every day I think is preposterous, but
Well, certainly. But I also argue this too. I mean, depends. So I think different roles require different things. So Tom, you've done a lot of like proactive sales in your business, like reaching out, making relationships, talking to people, getting them to absorb what you're doing. I mean, I didn't have that necessarily, and people kind of reached out to me just because of RBI tips, found me on YouTube. And to your point there, Tommy, as well, I think one of the things, if anyone's trying to become a consultant, I've always said it's the sales funnel that kills you. You can be the best consultant in the world, but if you don't have a good sales funnel to get people that have needs, there's people that want to buy your services, period. There is 100%. It's finding those people and getting them to a place where they see the value of what you deliver and are willing to pay you for it. That's the trick. And so it's that sales funnel. And again, I lucked into this. I didn't build Power BI tips to be a sales funnel. It just kind of happened, and people know me from that space. And so I think a lot of those things just kind of evolved, and that's kind of what's helped a lot of the business pieces as well. And that's why I continue to invest a lot. A side point to this is I've done a number of interviews for companies around Power BI developers. And one of the things I always ask, I learned this from you, Seth, is where do you learn? Like, how do Power BI? What are your sources of information? Like, how do you get that information in, like, how do you learn more? And a lot of people say YouTube. And the reason I'm pointing this out is even the way we learn has changed. We're not going to webinars. We're not going to a building in a training room to go through training. All of that's been digitized as well. And now our most popular learning resource is the internet. And it's now just YouTube videos. You want to go fix it? You want to go learn how to build a deck, Tommy? YouTube it. There's like 60 companies who've made a how to build a deck YouTube video, and you could do it yourself. Like, so to me anymore, like the whole ability to learn things has now also changed. I don't actually need to be in a place. Knowledge and information is so easily shared anymore, and now it's all done in video form. So now I don't even have to it's not reading a manual. It's just sitting there and watching what they do and mimicking it. It's crazy what we can do now. So I think work remote is here to stay. I think it's going to be a challenge for companies to find the balance of how much of that to enforce or not to, and to retain that top talent still.
Yeah, I think in total, I agree. Work dynamics changed during the pandemic. Fundamentally, we figured out how to work remotely. This presents challenges to companies, especially with very large investments in brick and mortar. And I think that's where you find a lot of these RTO policies. What is, I think, a point of pause is if Gartner is basically saying you could, if you mandate, lose 16% of your high performers, that should make you pause for a second and kind of probably follow some of the guidelines that they're saying, which are, it's probably a good idea to engage and maybe figure out your work remote policy, or in office on a team basis, because some teams may love to come back. Others will be like, none of us want to come in. The other point in there is if you could lose 16% of your high performers, this is also a leverage point that other companies can use against you. So to just go and blanketly mandate things is very risky.
Dangerous.
Because high performers know that there are organizations out there that will allow them to work remote. And if you enjoy the convenience and or have a million different reasons why like working remote is a better fit, you'll be able to find it.
You'll find it.
Having said that, I think
I like that
even
point,
even with remote work, I think companies need to embrace tooling that increases remote communication. You need to create policies. You need to have interaction. Unless there are exceptions, most people should be on video, because that is how we're engaged. We're visual people. I need to pick up on the nonverbal cues to make sure I'm resonating with people. And you absolutely need to work at keeping the relationships within teams active. That means having teams meetings that are one-on-one between employees and managers, or team meetings that are not specifically gauged for business. It's just for team interaction and catching up and carving out teams meetings, right? For time for teams to be teams. Because that is super important. Otherwise you will completely lose that. And then ultimately I think that just dictates, do teams, build their own policies as it relates to getting together. And I think they make one of the really poignant ones. One of the things I absolutely do miss are opportunities where
Twinkies, snacks in the office snacks,
where you have a really big project or a really big initiative, or a big conversation around next quarter objectives, where it would be fantastic to have a team in a conference room and you're just hammering stuff out for a couple days. Not to say you can't do that, right? You just bring the teams in, but the more remote you are, the more challenging that does become. But it's a new landscape, and I think this just shows that hard mandates are probably not the direction organizations want to go, without a little bit more due diligence with their HR teams.
I like your final point there, Seth, around bringing people in for a powwow and then letting them go back. I would maybe also argue that the savings in cost in not having a bigger building and not having to have,
if you have
extra desks, right? Extra having like those extra resources that, if you don't have those things, potentially you could just spend a bit more on the intense focused period of time, make it a special moment for the team to bond and get together. And then from there, you're able to do the focused intensity for a week workshop, and then everyone goes back to their. And honestly, people feel energized. To have something like that in your company is an energizing effect. It builds camaraderie. There's a lot of really good things. I've seen that effectively in my company as well when I bring everyone together. So that's awesome. All right. I was skeptical on this topic. I didn't know how well we would go down this route. Thank you, Tommy and Seth. I picked this topic, so if you hate it, it's my fault. If you lose all your talent because you are having mandates for bringing everyone back in the office, that's not my fault. That's your fault. I tried to let you know in the podcast. So
there was a warning.
If you're top talent and you want to leave your company, come talk to Tommy and I. We'll be more than happy to put you to work.
That's what I'm saying.
This whole episode was, I need more people to help me do work. Just kidding. That's actually not the truth. But if you do, call me or Tommy. We're available on LinkedIn. That being said,
your reply you always get is busy. So
I'm just teasing. Not really. And then thank you very much for listening to this episode. We appreciate your ears listening to us. We've got a good number of followers. Twitter, you've been killing it recently. Twitter, you have a ton of listeners. So thank you very much, Twitter listeners. We really appreciate you jumping in and listening on Twitter. So I want to directly thank you very much for your time and your ears. If you like this episode, if this was interesting to you, if you want to jab at your boss a bit about having his return to work mandate a bit, give him this episode. Let him know. Tommy, Seth, and Mike all agree that work remote is a great idea, or not. Anyways, that being said, Tommy, where else can you find the podcast?
Well, unfortunately, they're all online, Mike. You can find us on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast. Make sure to subscribe and leave a rating. Helps us out a ton. If you have a question, idea, or a topic that you want us to talk about in a future episode, head over to powerbi.tips/podcast. Leave your name and a great question. And finally, join us live every Tuesday and Thursday, 7:30 a.m. and join the conversation on all powerbi.tips social media channels.
Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.